He really knew about everything. And he wrote a very important book, Monumenta Sinica. And in this book, he has the abstruse theory that, in fact, the Chinese are Egyptians. And he based this abstruse finding on an analysis or comparison of the two scripts, of the hieroglyphs and the Chinese characters. And he found some similitudes. Of course, we have to note also that was long before Champollion, so long before the hieroglyphs could be read. And this strange theory got maintained by the scientists, not by the Jesuits, by the scientists till the end of the 18th century. The Jesuits, the missionaries in China said, no, that's Chinese as Egyptians, that's a little bit too strange. Don't believe it. And we have still the correspondence left of one Jesuit, published correspondence, and the head of the Académie des Sciences, of the Scientific Academy in Paris. Well, the head of the Academy of Sciences in Paris maintains the Egyptian origin of the Chinese. And the Jesuits said, no, that's nonsense. But they had the problem that China was not mentioned in the Bible. And you know, the word vision before was, in the history books, that the world was made of 3 continents, which were Europe, Asia, and Libya or Africa. Asia would be half of the world, and Europe and Africa 1/4. So it was represented as a circle. In the middle was, that depended on the cartographer, that could be Jerusalem, that could be Rome, that could be the Garden of Eden. And the further you go, the world becomes strange. There are monsters. If you read Baudolino from Umberto Eco, you'll find a very nice illustration of this worldview. For instance, you have people who have only one leg, but they can run much faster as we do. And when they want to take a rest and it is raining, they just put their big foot over their head, and there is no rain. You have also, in this view of the world, you have animals like elephants, like lions, and then unicorns. Because of course, nobody had seen a lion or an elephant. So if that's real, a unicorn also could be very real. So you have fantasy animals, real animals at the same time. And then there was the world, as you see, the Christian world and the Muslim world. And the Muslim, they didn't know much about Islam. So the first translation of the Quran in Latin was mixed with the commentary. So we did not really know what is commentary, what is the real text. And they spoke that the Muslims venerate a god with a sheep's head, which is called Baphomet. Now, you know that is far from every reality. No. So Europe only had a very, I would say, bad vision and not based on any knowledge of Islam. And then you had the world beyond Islam, and these were the Indies. So the Indies covers Africa and Asia at the time. And the Jesuits now bring news about the Indies, or also other missionaries, not only the Jesuits. Because when the Jesuits were dissolved, it were the Lazarist fathers who continued their work in Beijing. So, this China as an ancient country, and China had already a history writing. So China had chronologies with the history of the country, the reign of such an emperor, such an emperor. So the Jesuits living in Beijing, they put all together, they made a Chinese chronology, And then they became very much afraid. Because what they put together was that China was elder than Noah's flood. Which is impossible if you consider the flood of Noah as a real historical happening. They were embarrassed. They did not know how to solve that problem. And you see that the editing, because many of the letters the missionaries wrote are edited in Europe before being published. So they try to take all these question marks out of the texts, to make it a little bit simpler. And so they had to do a tour de force, as you say in French. They had to do a big effort in order to put China into this Christian time schedule as it was seen in the Bible. Therefore, they rejected the Vulgata, the Latin translation of the Bible, which in fact was a scandal, because the Tridentine Council had said that the Vulgata were the real translation of the Bible. And they used the Greek Bible instead, the Septuaginta, because the Greek Bible has a longer time frame. So with a little bit of effort, you could still squeeze China just after Noah. But that was not all the problems. You know that the Jesuits became Confucian scholars. They dressed like the Confucian scholars in China, and they explained Christianity as true Confucianism. Confucianism of the origins. And that again was due to the interpretation of history. Because you see 3 continents, as I said before, Asia, and every continent was populated by one son of Noah, who multiplied very quickly. Because you know, these people, you read the Bible, they got very old, so 200 years or so they could have many children during that time. And that seems very strange for us, but they calculated at the time. So if he was so old, how many children could he have had? So they calculate the population of the world on the story of Noah, and thought that would be an exact science. That was a mixture of exact science of statistics, which was new at that time, and of the biblical story. And so one of the sons of Noah also went to Asia. So for the Jesuits, then it was very clear he went to China. And now comes the important point, because this Confucian philosophy and the high moral value of Confucianism, it's very strange that such a thing can exist outside the Christian framework. So they thought Confucius himself, or was Noah himself, or a son of Noah, or a grandson. And Confucianism is nothing else than the natural revelation of God after the flood, that Europe had forgotten about and China had preserved. So you see, at the same time they try to put China into a European mental framework to explain this new phenomenon, but at the same time they find something better than in Europe at that time. But they couldn't solve the problem about this chronology. So some people, the so-called figurists, made a mystical interpretation of history. The one who really took the consequences was Voltaire. Voltaire normally is always seen as an opponent of the church, and that is true for a certain period of his life. But we forget that Voltaire was educated by the Jesuits, that as a child in